What's up, guys? I'm here with my boy Bones, and this is Advanced Training Techniques, also known as ATT. Now, when I drag Bones out here, that usually means we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about some specific exercises, talk about muscle insertions, origination points, all that good stuff, but not today. Today, we're going to talk about something completely different, and it actually relates to the last two ATT videos that I did, talking about reps for building muscle and ideal rest time for building muscle. But this is something that we've never talked about before. It's actually a little bit controversial. I say controversial because it always seems to spark up all kinds of debate, which I'm fine with. The other part that it sparks up, and this is the part why I never talk about, is all the negativity. And there's so much negativity surrounding this subject, and that is training naturally versus enhanced, or taking steroids. Everyone always seems to have an opinion. Everybody thinks they know it all when this comes to the subject, but I see so much crazy stuff out there. I read this stuff, I'm like, where do people come up with this stuff? It's ridiculous. So, if you look at why I did ATT videos in the first place, it was to help dispel some of the bad information, the myths, all this stuff that's floating around out there, and help you guys simplify it, make it easy to understand, so you can separate fact from fiction. So, even though I don't like talking about this subject because it is so negative, and I like focusing on positive stuff that we can use constructively to come into the gym and build our physiques and build our lives and, create cool stuff in our life, I hate focusing on negative stuff. But with that being said, I feel that it's a necessary conversation to have because there is so much confusion out there. So let's wipe out that confusion today and let's just talk about facts. What do steroids do for you and what don't they do for you? And then how does that relate to training? So I had a lot of questions about, the right rep range for building muscle. People said, well, that rep range only works if you're training naturally or if you're taking steroids. Or no, that rest time only works if you're taking steroids. So let's just go ahead, let's lay it all out there so you guys can make better informed decisions here, or at least, like I said, separate fact from fiction. So what do steroids really do? Because they're not magic. Well, they're going to do two things, really. The biggest one of them all is recovery. All right, so recovery is one. We'll talk about that here in a second. And the second is protein synthesis. So what is the difference between training naturally versus enhanced? Well, if you're training naturally, you have to be more cognizant about your rest time because that's where you build muscle. Versus taking steroids, it gives you an advantage and allows you to recover quicker. In other words, it allows you to train with more volume and with more frequency and still recover. Whereas if you're training naturally, you would actually start to break muscle down potentially if you train that same way, that same frequency and intensity and total volume that you can when you're taking anabolics. So, what would be the difference? What's an example of the two? Okay, well, a common question that I get is how many times can I work out a muscle group per week? Let's say it's biceps. I want to grow my biceps. This is the question. I want to grow my biceps, so I want to train them twice a week. Is that going to be effective for building muscle? Well, that's where the recovery part comes in. Why does recovery play such an important part? Well, it's really actually very simple. When you work out, you come into the gym, you're not building muscle in the gym. We've all heard the saying, in the gym you break down muscle, it's in the recovery process that you build muscle. What does that mean? That means we come in here, we kick our ass in the gym, and we're literally tearing muscle down. We're causing micro trauma to the muscle. In the recovery process, our body rebuilds just a little bit stronger, and so it's this incremental process. Matter of fact, in my last video that I did, I talked about success and what does it take to reach your goals. And I was saying that it comes in little itty bitty steps, that it's not big giant leaps. Well, building muscle is the exact same way. It comes in little teeny tiny steps that you can't even really recognize, but over a period of time, you make that progress. So with building muscle, you go into the gym, you break the muscle down, the recovery process, you build it up just a little bit stronger. The next time you break it down, you build it up. So if you're not giving your body adequate recovery time, what happens? Well, you break it down, and in the recovery process, if it's cut short or you're not recovering fully, at best, you end up right back where you started. What's even worse is what if you don't recover enough? Then it's gradually starting to break your body down. So that's why recovery is so important. So now if you're taking anabolics, it's giving you that advantage, allowing you to recover that much quicker. So you're able to train with more total volume and more frequency and still recover. So that's one of the biggest advantages of taking anabolics or being enhanced. You look at professional baseball players in the past, all the controversy that was always on the news about some of these top professional baseball players, especially the guys that are out there hitting home runs, taking anabolics. What was the real advantage? Was it them getting that much stronger, allowing them to hit the ball that much further? That's what most people think, but it's really not. It still goes back to recovery. Those guys that can hit the home runs, most of them could hit home runs regardless of whether they were natural or enhanced. So what's the difference? Well, look at a Major League Baseball schedule. How many games they play in a season. Now multiply that over the years of their career, and what happens? They start to get worn down. So by taking anabolics, it allows them to recover quicker, recover the same way they did when they were younger. And this is a key part we're going to jump into next. So it allows them to recover just as fast as they did earlier on in their career. And that's why most of these guys are taking it, not for the strength gains. Yes, there's been a few exceptions through the years. Guys that went from skinny and all of a sudden they blew up, and that allowed them to hit home runs. If you're bigger and stronger, can you hit the ball further? Yes, of course. But most of the guys we're talking about were great baseball players anyway. Well, this is my big beef with people taking anabolics. Here's how it used to go. People would train as hard as they could for a period of time until they hit their natural threshold. Well, what is that? What is that ceiling? Well, it happens over a long period of time, and it's not going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's more like 10 years. It's more like a decade of training hard and being consistent, reaching your natural potential. Like I said, people talk about progression, progressive overload. Well, yes, there's such thing as continuing to progress, but at a certain point, you hit a ceiling. You're not going to progress anymore. I'm not going to get any bigger than I am now or any stronger than I am now. I've been training for 25 years. It's not going to happen. So if progressive overload or progression continued on indefinitely, well, I would be like 400 pounds now and I'd be deadlifting 1,000 pounds. That's not the case. So at a certain point, you hit your natural threshold. That is your natural genetic limitation. Now in the past, guys used to train to that point. They'd say, let me get as big and strong as I can. Then at that point, then they would evaluate their situation and say, am I happy here, or do I want to take it further past my genetic potential? And that's where you would see guys taking anabolics. So what's the difference now? Well, now everyone wants instant gratification. They want it quick, they want it easy, they want to skip past that decade of hard training, and so right in their first year of training, boom, they jump right into it. So instead of reaching their natural potential, they instead take anabolics to first try to reach that same level. And that's sad to me. That's sad to me because why would you skip past all the hard work and all the dedication just to get to that level, a level that you could get to anyway? And that's the sad part. So now when you see someone who posts their picture, they're in great shape, they're 175 pounds at 5'10", they got some good abs, they got a little bit of muscle tone, everyone cries, oh, he's juicing. Like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Like, if you think that you have to take steroids to be 175 pounds, then you might as well just quit. Just give up. Just go ahead and throw in the towel because you're so far off it's not even funny.
I see. Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?
You can achieve a lot with never ever touching anabolics. Now, if you want to go to that next level, if you want to be, 300 pounds, that's a different story. But that's after you've reached your genetic potential. So that's the part that kind of makes me sad, is because they take the fun out of it for themselves. To me, it's my best against someone else's best based on hard work, based on dedication, based on consistency and commitment, doing all the right things, and that means eating right and, sticking to the consistency with your training schedule. It's all those things, and that takes a lot of mental discipline. I always say that it's just as much a mental game as it is physical. But everyone always wants to skip past that. And I guess, it's just a sign of the times now. We live in an age of convenience where we've got technology and everything else in our life to make things easier, to make them quicker, to make it more convenient, to try to skip past all that hard work. And so that's my 2-minute spiel on, my pet peeve with it. But now let's get back to the topic. I mentioned 2 things. The first was recovery. The other is going to be protein synthesis. We've heard the term thrown around or we read about it, but what is protein synthesis in its most basic form? Well, we talked about that process of breaking down muscle, which is going to be catabolism, versus building muscle back up, which is anabolism. You talk about being in an anabolic state versus a catabolic state. So what is that? Well, that is that process of our body either breaking muscle proteins down or building muscle proteins up. It's really just that simple. So that's why we take protein powders. That's why we take amino acids. It's helping with protein synthesis, that building up of our muscle proteins. So that's what makes a muscle bigger and stronger. So we come into the gym, we break muscle down. And in that process, we become catabolic slightly, right? We're breaking muscle down. And then in that repairing process, that's protein synthesis. We take in the proteins, we take in the amino acids, and our body builds those proteins back up. So that's really what protein synthesis is in a nutshell. When you take anabolics, it can help accelerate protein synthesis. So that's the other benefit of it. But can you build muscle naturally? Does protein synthesis occur naturally? Of course it does. And there's techniques to do that. And if you go back and you watch some of the last 2 videos on how many reps you do to build muscle and what's the ideal rest time for building muscle, that's some of the stuff that we talked about, stimulating protein synthesis. So that is the big difference. So really it's the exact same process. It's no different. Nothing magical is happening. It's not like, something came down from planet Krypton that all of a sudden just made you stronger that's, outside the normal processes that your body goes through normally. No, it's the exact same processes. It's just enhanced. That's all. It's enhancing recovery and it's enhancing protein synthesis, which for all practical purposes isn't even 2 separate things. It's really one thing. Protein synthesis is a part of recovery. So they're not even separate. They're one in the same. So that is the advantage of taking anabolics versus being natural. Now there's other side benefits as well with lipolysis, which means the loss of fat. Totally different topic though. We're talking about building muscle here. So when people ask me, okay, James, in your rep structure of 20, 10, 10, 15, I've been told that those high rep sets of 20 reps and 15 reps, those only work if you're, on anabolics. That's not the case. Matter of fact, go back and watch these last 2 videos that I did, these last 2 ATT videos, and we talk about that. So that, in a nutshell, is the difference between training naturally versus being on anabolics. So what's my big takeaway here? Don't try to skip the hard work. And I know it's tempting because we live in a society of instant gratification. We want everything right now. And here's the worst part. We go to social media and we go to websites and we go to the magazines and we see these ridiculous 12-week transformations where someone goes from skinny and fat to ripped and muscular. It's not realistic. It's not realistic. That's all BS. It takes time. And that's why I did the video series Games to Gains with Kirby. I wanted to take a real guy and say, look, this is what really happens when you work hard, you come into the gym, you push yourself, you're consistent, you eat right, you take all the right supplements. This is what can happen. And guess what? He gained a lot of weight, he gained a lot of strength, but he didn't look like a cover model for, a magazine, a fitness magazine. Not yet anyway, but if he keeps doing this, in a couple years he could. But that's the thing, it takes years. So when someone accuses me of taking steroids, you know what? I don't even feel compelled to try to defend myself. I laugh to myself, and all I have to say is this. If after 25 years of training, 25 years of consistent training, pushing myself, eating right, that I have to take steroids to look this way, well, hey, I don't even know what to tell you. I'm at a loss for words. I might as well get into an argument with my 4-year-old daughter whether, the Little Mermaid really exists or not. It's just not even a worthwhile conversation for me because it's not based on anything real. It's not based on logic. And that's what I want to arm you guys with, is some real facts. And when people talk about all this stuff and someone says to you, hey, you can't be 175 pounds with abs without taking steroids, dismiss it. Don't even give it 2 seconds of thought, because that's for the people that don't want to put in the time, they don't want to put in the hard work, they don't know how to push themselves, and that's their hang up, that's their limitation. But let it be theirs, don't let it be yours. That's why I did this video. I just want to separate fact from fiction so you guys don't let it bog you down in your own goals of what you think you can achieve. I think I've covered it all. I'm sure this video is going to get all kinds of hate, just because anytime you talk about this topic, it sparks all that up. People are going to be like, you're not natural, or you're juiced, you're this, you're that. That's fine. I'm willing to go ahead and take all that on for the sake of providing you guys with better information. So I hope this helps you, and hopefully we don't have to address this topic anymore, and we can move on to better, more productive things like how to train right, how to eat right, how to keep ourselves motivated and on track. Why? Because results come from consistency and they come from time. So you have to be patient and you have to be willing to put in the hard work. And so that's what I'm trying to share with you guys, is good information so you can stay the course, so you can manage your expectations, you can set goals for yourself that are still a stretch, but they're also still within reach. Because if you set this crazy goal based on what someone else is doing, especially if they're cheating the system, you're going to set yourself up for failure. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to say, God, what's wrong with me? He could do it. Why can't I? And that's why everyone looks and they just point the finger at the guy who puts in the time, the consistency, the years and years and years and years of hard work, and says, he just cheated. No, maybe he put in years and years and years of hard work. Don't dismiss someone's hard work, especially if you're not willing to put the same amount of hard work in. So that's my lesson for today, and this has been ATT.